So a very warm welcome to our information session this afternoon, which is being led by Pete Gregory from Allied Health at the University of Wolverhampton. My name is Paula Harrison and I'm delighted to be hosting this advice session. Just to introduce myself, I'm the coordinator of University Centre Telford, and we're part of the University of Wolverhampton, and we're based in the South Water building, for those of you who know Telford, right in the heart of Telford in Shropshire. And we run lots of advice events and public lectures in our centre in Telford, but obviously because of the current pandemic, we've moved everything online. We're also joined today by Lee Cooper, who is from the applicant support team at our city campus in Wolverhampton, and he's going to deliver a presentation on student finance. Now, before I introduce Pete formally and hand over to him, I just wanted to explain that there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each session via the Q&A button. And if you're using a laptop or desktop, the icon is on the bottom of your screen in the middle. And if you're using a mobile, it will be in the top right-hand corner. So as I said before, we're delighted that you've joined us and delighted that Pete is here with us today to deliver this information session on paramedic science. Pete is head of Allied Health at the University of Wolverhampton, and I'm going to hand over to him now to take the presentation forward. Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Paula. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session at the University of Wolverhampton. So as Paula says, my name's Pete Gregory, and probably just a bit of background about me before we kick off with a very quick Kahoot that has a sum total of 10 questions in it, just to see what you know, a little bit about paramedics, where we've come from, where we're going to. So as you can probably tell, I've got the lighting set in a particular way that makes my hair look blonde, but it is very, very grey because I'm very, very old, and I've been around the block a few times as a paramedic. So just a brief bit of information, because you will require this for the Kahoot. I joined West Midlands Ambulance Service in 1985, which is probably before any of you were born. And I qualified as a paramedic in 1992, which is still probably before most of you were born. So on that basis, I'm just going to hang on for a few minutes to leave as many of you to join in this Kahoot as possible. And we'll see what we're going to be doing. What I'm going to be doing after this is just talking you through the course that we offer at the University of Wolverhampton, developments that are going on up at Telford Campus at the moment, looking at some of the things we do a little bit differently to how other universities do it, and some of the expectations we have of our students, because as you might imagine, if you're going to go out looking after patients, then we're anticipating that you're exceptionally good at what you do. So we don't accept mediocre on that basis. Again, looking at me, I'm prime age to have a heart attack at the moment. If I do, I'd like the paramedic that attends to me not only to be competent, because that's the easy bit largely, but I actually want them to care as well, which is the slightly more difficult bit to deliver care with compassion. So if anybody else is still dropping in, still a few people coming in, I'll give you another minute. Okay, so we'll kick off. Very, very quick quiz for you. So what do you know about the world of paramedics? So how long do you think my theory component was of my training when I qualified in 1992? Could it be as low as 4 weeks? That'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it? 4 months. Okay, so one person got that correct. For the 16 of you who thought it was a year, crikey. It's a bit worrying, isn't it? It's worrying on the basis that I did 4 weeks of training, and yet I'm now apparently head of department, so I'm going to be teaching you on a degree programme. The good news is I have done a little bit more study since then, but 4 weeks was all I had. Congratulations, Andy. True or false question then? So currently, there's a threshold for entry to the register. Moving to the correct answer. I'm sure most of you wouldn't believe that at the moment, to enter the register as a registered healthcare professional with the HCPC as it is, the Health and Care Professions Council, Paramedic still has the lowest entry threshold of any single entrant onto that register. So we're currently at equivalent to certificate level, which is year one of a degree course, basically. As from next year, it's going to full degree, so you won't be able to start any program next year that isn't a degree to become a paramedic, and about time too. So when I completed my initial paramedic training, how many drugs do you think I The answer is 4, yeah. And essentially the drugs they gave me were largely to do with people who were either dead or were about to die. And we had a very, very set number of cases that we could actually deliver those drugs to. So we only had 4 drugs at that stage. Oh, big shift in the leaderboard there. So follow-up question, how many drugs do you think paramedics deliver now? 35 to 40 is the correct answer, and that's the reason it's going up to degree level, because you can turn well living patients into not very well, and if you get it horribly, horribly wrong, you can turn somebody from a live patient into a dead patient, which is clearly a particularly bad thing to do. So, do you need a driving license to become a paramedic? The answer is no, you don't. So you will need a driving license to become a paramedic working for an ambulance service, but you don't actually need a driving license to be a paramedic, full stop. It's not one of the competencies. Oh, Amy's still up there. Starting salaries for NHS paramedics. You know this one, surely. Yeah, 22 to 24,000 plus on social hours. So on social hours can be another 25% on top of that. So it's not too bad a starting wage. So medical way of saying a heart attack, which one of those is correct? Congratulations, 11 of you. Cardiac arrest is when your heart actually stops completely. So it can be caused by a heart attack, but not always. Oh, still no change at the top of the leaderboard. Which statement is untrue about oxygen? Excellent. The majority of you got that. Actually, oxygen can be really dangerous for patients. Again, when I first started, we gave loads of oxygen to everything, whether it moved or not, because we always believed it couldn't do any harm at that stage. However, we now know that's way, long way from the truth. How fast should you compress the chest during CPR? Some of you will be some John's first aiders, potentially. Some of you have done first aid course. Okay, so 100, 120 times a minute, right? This is the crucial question now. This is absolutely essential for anybody who wants to be a paramedic. Who is that? Well, 11 of you are on the course straight away. Led Zeppelin, my favourite band by a long, long way. So it's absolutely essential that you know your onions about that. The third was Meg there. Second, Andy. Right. I'm just going to close that down completely. And we're going to just run into this. So this is going to be a quick run through paramedic science and what we actually do at the university, and hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into what you'd be getting into. Probably worth saying at this point, this is not a 2-day a week at university and 5 days a week in a pub getting drunk. This is really a full-on course. So what I'm going to just do is, obviously we've already given you a bit of a welcome to the University of Wolverhampton, but I'll let you know whereabouts we sit within the organisation and what it's all about, what it is to be a paramedic, a bit of history. I've already given you a little insight into that, where it could take you, because life's a bit different now, and there are multiple opportunities for paramedics to extend their skill set, to go into different environments now. I'll run you through the course program and placements very, very quickly around driving licence, DBS, but I'll flick through those sections quite quickly. So basically, we have 2 campuses that we use for paramedic. Number 1 is Walsall, which is where the main cohort sits at the moment. So we recruit 100 students there per year on a September cohort, and we split them into groups once we've actually got them there. We are, from April this year, going to be running a course at Telford as well. More of that in a bit, but we sit in an expanding faculty. So health, when I first arrived 5 years ago, incorporated nursing and midwifery, and I was the first paramedic to arrive. So my background, I actually came from Coventry University via BCU very briefly, but paramedic didn't exist at Wolverhampton 5 years ago. So we've gone from recruiting 6 students in 2015 to recruiting 125 5 years later. We've grown from me as being the only paramedic to having a team of 13, 14 paramedic lecturers. Not all of them are paramedics. We've got some nurses in the team. We've just gone out to recruit somebody who's got an anatomy and physiology specialty, and we've gone out to recruit a mental health nurse as well. But we sit there with podiatry, physiotherapy and occupational therapy, who all sit on the same professional register as us. And we've got the nursing, community health and midwifery in there as well. So it's a growing faculty, and it's a good place to be at the moment. That's the $64 million question. And if I was in a room with you, I'd ask you for your own impression of what a paramedic actually is. And most people get their views from the television, from watching 999, Watch Your Emergency and other such programs as that. Reality is quite different. For the majority of the time, a paramedic, it's about communication, it's about caring for people, it's about those soft skills. We go out to a lot of people who've got what are called urgent care needs. So they're not the life-saving, life-threatening emergency cases. Sometimes it's somebody who's got a dislocation. Sometimes it's just somebody who's a bit lonely, somebody who's not spoken to anybody for the past month or so. And for some of us who've been stuck in lockdown, we can probably understand what that's like, but that's their normal life. It's a caring, compassionate job, and that's what it's all about for us, is about the care element of it. So being a paramedic, occasionally you'll save a life if you're very, very lucky, but every day you'll contribute to the well-being of people, whether that's on a mental health basis, whether it's just being nice to somebody, whether it's looking after them when they're having their heart attack, whether it's looking after their father when he's having his heart attack, whether it's looking after somebody when their relative has just died. So very, very diverse job, uncontrolled environment to work in, which is what gives it its excitement. You've already found out I've been involved with this for 35 years, still involved with it because I still love it. I'm not here because I have to be, I'm here because I want to be, I choose to be. And after 35 years in a career, that's still a nice thing to be able to say. Core values of a paramedic. Some of you may have read the mid-staff's review, which came out probably about 5-6 years ago now, maybe even longer than that actually, which looked at some of the disasters that happened at the mid-staff's hospital. And from out of that came this nursing view about the core values of healthcare practitioners, which is about care, it's about compassion, communication, competence, courage and commitment, the 6 C's as they call them. And that really is inherent in everything we do. And like I say, you can deliver care or you can deliver care with compassion, and they're 2 very, very different things. And what I'd like is for the paramedics that leave our course to deliver their care with compassion, understanding that, yeah, it's just a needle to you, but you've got the pointy end pointing away from you. And for that patient who's having the pointy end put into them, it's got a different meaning. We need to understand that and work with them. Talk about communication. Communication is the one skill you take with you every single day to every single job, be that your verbal communication, your non-verbal communication, it could be telecommunication, any number of things. That's the thing that will get you the information you require. It'll get it very, very quickly. It'll enable you to do the job well. And quite importantly, it'll keep you out of trouble as well, because sometimes you're going to be in a situation where there's something kicking off outside a pub, and how you handle that could be the difference between you going home with a black eye and you going home looking as gorgeous as you do today. Competence goes without saying. Courage to challenge bad practice sometimes, the courage to recognize that failure does occur at times and to learn from that. The commitment, this is a real big commitment, trust me. Talk to our students and I'll tell you how much commitment you need to get through this program. This isn't the 4-week program I did, this is 3 years of tough work. So when I joined the ambulance service, we had these sorts of vehicles here, so in the middle of the screen, and you can see we used to have sliding doors. They stopped us using sliding doors on ambulances because we didn't have air conditioning in those days, so we used to quite often drive around with the doors open to get a bit of air blowing through. Health and safety, we probably shouldn't have done that, but at least we had seat belts on at the time. But that looks the transition from where we used to be, white ambulances with a red stripe and blue lights on the top. And if you look down this bottom left-hand corner here, you can see that we had 2 stretchers. So it's very rare to carry 2 patients at a time, but we had the facility to do that. And if you look on the back of that vehicle, where's all the kit? So this chap here is looking at the oxygen cylinder here. So it's the old style oxygen cylinder, it's black and white as opposed to what they are now. But where is the kit? You've got some kit up in the overhead lockers here. And that's pretty much it, because we just didn't have that much in the way of kit in those days. Move forward, and this is where we are today. And this is a very modern vehicle, and you can see we've got 1 stretcher, completely different type of stretcher, and all of these cupboards here. Again, it looks a bit bare, but everything is in its place, and there's a place for everything. And to tell you the difference in terms of the weight of the vehicles, so all of the vehicles now have to be plated at over 3,500 kilograms, which means you need a specific type of driving license for them. And the reason for that is the increased amount of equipment that we carry now against what we used to do. If you're looking for a future career, you can be MAD. So these guys from the Hazardous Area Response Team, HART as they're known as, and they're the sort of people who will go into sort of like areas with smoke, chemicals, that type of thing. Me, I'd be walking the other way generally. Air ambulance, if you want to get on that, no reason why you shouldn't. You've just got to be very, very good at what you do. Fast response vehicles have largely gone now. We've moved away from that approach, but it's a very big change in terms of what we're doing. And when I was talking about what could we do from here, so this top left person, so this is a guy called Scott Hawkins. He's now an advanced care practitioner and he works at New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton. This here with the back to us, going back a couple of years, this is Steph, one of our lecturers now, obviously out in her role as a paramedic as well. This person here is a lady who is also this lady down here. So this was her as a paramedic in the RAF. So this was MERT. So this is the Medical Emergency Response Team and Retrieval Team. So they'd fly out to retrieve patients out in Afghanistan. And you can see now she's changed her role very, very slightly. She's now working as a forensic paramedic. So she works in a custody suite, and that's where they will make decisions about whether somebody's safe to be kept in custody, whether they need to go to hospital. They'll be doing a lot of the drugs checks and mental health checks and things like that. So this again is Steph. So Steph is one of 3 members of our team who work with West Midlands care team. So this is a group of doctors and advanced practitioners who provide support to the West Midlands Ambulance Service. So 3 of our staff do that. This down here, excuse me, is Lorraine Valance, and she's now an emergency care practitioner. And talk about multidisciplinary, this young lady here is a physiotherapist, and both advanced practitioners now. So this has moved on from the days of me doing a 4-week training course to where these guys are going now. And this gentleman here is a chap called Richard Smith. He's one of what we would call an offshore paramedic, and he's very offshore. He works on cruise liners, or he did before COVID kicked in, and then all of a sudden COVID doesn't quite work quite so well. I'm going to flick the next slide. There's a video on there, but I'm not sure it's going to play that well on my laptop, and you won't get the sound from it. What I will do is I'll put a link in there so that you can go and watch it. This slide I'm going to run through relatively briefly, just on the basis that I put it together a wee while ago, just to illustrate the sorts of things that we do on a daily basis. So this is probably not now because everybody's locked down, and when bars are open, they close at 10 o'clock. But to go and pick up a weary traveller of the night on his way home from a few sherbets who's stopped off at a public convenience and fallen asleep. Most people, I don't think, would say, what's the one thing you want to do on a Monday evening maybe, is wading through other people's urine in a public convenience. It's probably not high on your list of things to do. It's what we do. You'll find terminology like a disco carpet. Disco carpet is where you keep your feet moving or you stick to it because there's lots of unpleasant things on there. And the one thing is that horrible squelching sound when you kneel on something and you still don't know what it is afterwards. It can be pretty bad. You can go out to this chap, stabbing pains in the head, very literally on this occasion. And you'll also go out to this sort of thing here. So a man with a hurty elbow, you'd be surprised at what we get called out and what we respond to. This one here, oops, sorry, let's just go back. That was the London bombings. And again, we've been fairly fortunate in Birmingham that we haven't had that much going on around by us recently, but I think some of you will have read in the news going back, I think it's 47 years now, to the pub bombings that did happen back in the days of the old IRA, the Irish Republic Army, back in the day, which killed 20, 30 people, I think it was now. So those are the sorts of things that we can end up going out to. And this one I'm going to highlight particularly because if we don't like older people, then this is definitely not the job for you, because that's a very large part of our patient group, if you like, is older people. And they're like everybody else in society. Some of them are absolutely hilarious, wonderful people to be with, and some of them are really objectionable, as you might imagine. But it doesn't matter who they are, we give them the dignity, we give them the treatment that they all deserve. This is a big thing down here as well. Drinking tea is mandatory. So if you don't already drink tea, you probably need to learn to, because it's a prerequisite of joining the ambulance services. You need to be able to drink copious amounts of tea and then not go to the toilet for 5 hours afterwards, just in case you get called out to a really difficult job. You will always say yes to tea. Whoever offers it you, whether you've had one recently or not, you'll still have one. These are things to bear in mind as well. So that is clearly a young child's foot that's been scalded. Now, whether that's deliberate or unintentional, this child can be quite difficult to manage just from our own emotional perspective. Some of you will love kids, some of you will hate kids, but something somewhere will hit your Achilles heel of your emotions and really, really play upon your conscience as you're going through with it. So kids who've been abused, older people who've been abused, all of those things are things that we have to face. So that is a typical day. It could be absolutely anything. It could be any of those things. This one down here, slight exaggeration, obviously I think that's set out in India, but driving, everybody loves driving on blue lights. Trust me, it gets really wearing after a bit. There's a bit of a talk about fees and finance later, but currently that's where we're sitting, £9,250. Whether anything's going to change coming up this year, I don't think so. But you are eligible for tuition fees loan, and I think it has actually gone up from 21,000 before you start paying back. But what we do give you is teaching, and it is excellent teaching, your placement, which we do pay for, Uniform, which again is a really good quality uniform, and this non-ambulance placement experiences, which I'll come on to in just a minute. The other good news is that you're all eligible for this now. So it's a £5,000 bursary that's paid to all student healthcare professionals. And this is the first year paramedics have ever been involved in anything the government's done. Paramedics have traditionally paid their own way through higher education. Even when nurses were getting all their fees paid, as were physiotherapists and every other healthcare professional except paramedics. Paramedics for the first time now are getting the same support as other healthcare professionals. So you'll be eligible for £5,000 payment per year whilst you're studying, which is really good news. In terms of our course, this is who it is. So we've got some important people here, our students. And if you thought I was going to point to this gentleman, no, these are the important people, our students. These are the ones that we focus on all the time. That gentleman there is Anthony Marsh. He's the Chief Executive Officer of West Midlands Ambulance Service. And that is Professor Jeff Layer, who's our Vice Chancellor. So we work very, very closely with West Midlands Ambulance Service. They are the first university trust, so it's West Midlands Ambulance Service University NHS Foundation Trust. And the university they chose to partner with was the University of Wolverhampton. So despite the fact I joined Coventry in 2003, so we kicked off our first paramedic courses there in 2003, kicked off paramedic courses in 2015, and it says something about the University of Wolverhampton that the West Midlands Ambulance chose to partner with us, not with their longer established partners. So you'll see them working closely with us on collaborative projects. Very briefly through years 1, 2 and 3, as the course stands at the moment, we are going up for review fairly shortly, but this is how it will be running. And what you will find is the modules seem to have very similar titles in years 1 and 2. So we do Sciences Underpinning Paramedic Practice in year 1, which is anatomy, physiology. It's an introduction to pharmacology, and it's an introduction to pathophysiology. So disease processes, trauma, what happens when somebody gets hit by a bus, you know, beyond the obvious that they tend to bounce off the bus, other things are then going to happen. So we'll start talking about that. Foundation skills for paramedics. This is where we do all your moving and handling, start off with patient assessment. We do airway management, basic life support, intermediate life support, loads and loads of foundation level skills in there. Practice I'm going to come back to in a little bit. We also do 2 really, really important modules. So number 1 is Foundations of Communication and Professionalism. Very, very important that we understand what it means to be a professional, a registered healthcare professional, and then understanding communication, because we're communicating with people from all different backgrounds, different healthcare professionals, and it's really important that we get that done well. And the final module in year 1 is Effective Learning, Research Methods and Evidence-Based Practice. And what we do here is give you the skills to actually write academically. We give you the skills to find literature. We give you the skills to read the research, the evidence that informs and tells us what we should do in practice and why we should do it that way. If I move to year 2, not a lot changes. So we've still got Sciences Underpinning Paramedic Practice, but it's now got the snappy 2 at the end of it. And what we do is we push you from where we got you in year 1, and we take you more deeply into anatomy, physiology, more deeply into pharmacology, more deeply into the pathophysiology. So with blood pressure, for example, we'll take you to here in year 1 in terms of how blood pressure is managed and maintained normally. And then we take you up here in year 2. We'll then look at how drugs patients take interact and work with blood pressure. So some of you may have relatives who are on antihypertensives. So we'll look at how those drugs work. And then if we're going to give them a drug, how will those 2 drugs interact with each other? Because that's obviously pretty important. Skills for paramedic practice. So this is the year 2 module. So it should be Skills for Paramedic Practice 2. And essentially what we're doing is adding more skills on there. So we take you from fundamental airway management into more advanced airway management, for example. We take you from intermediate life support into advanced life support. We give you some additional skills. We give you needles to put into bones, all sorts of unpleasant things that we allow you to do at that point. Clinical practice, again, I'll come back to. We've then got paramedic management of patients with mental ill health and cognitive impairment. And this is where we look at people with learning disabilities, people with mental ill health, so people who've got depression, people with suicidal ideation, things like that, looking at how we as paramedics can better manage those people. We also look at the cognitive impairment. So again, we know there's a lot of people with dementia, and we've got a duty to work with them and to treat them as well as we possibly can under the circumstances as well. So it's looking at how would we communicate with somebody who can't communicate necessarily verbally back to us. All of those things get put into there. And again, this is where we're recruiting a specialist mental health nurse to come and join the team. We currently use our own mental health team to deliver that, but we want a specialist coming in to work as part of our actual department. Obstetrics and Paediatrics, so that's obviously pregnancy through to delivery, through to adulthood, and that's looking at all the differences, typical childhood illness and injuries and how to manage them. And then leadership and clinical decision making is exactly what it says on the tin. It's about clinical leadership. So understanding how we interact with each other, who's going to lead at a given case, all of those sorts of things. How do we make the decisions between taking somebody to hospital and leaving them at home? Third year looks slightly different, and what we're looking at is physical assessment and management of urgent care conditions. And you say, well, why do I do the emergency stuff early and the urgent care at the higher academic level? And quite simply, managing a heart attack is pretty easy. So you normally have a good idea of what's going on with the patient. We've got a very, very set treatment regime for them. We know where we're going to take them. That's really quite easy, and we're not leaving them at home, so therefore we take them to a safe place. The urgent care conditions are different because it could be anything from a headache, which could be just a single everyday headache, through to somebody who's got a bleed on the brain. We don't want to leave that patient at home. So looking at those urgent care conditions, the person who may have a fracture, who needs an X-ray and probably plastering, versus somebody who's just got a sprain who doesn't need that and can be self-managed. So it's looking at those issues in year 3 as well. Management of long-term conditions. So we've got tens of thousands of patients who've got long-term conditions. So chronic lung conditions, chronic heart conditions. The majority of them are living at home, and that's actually where we'd like them to stay. So we go out to a lot of patients with long-term conditions, and it's about working with them with their normal care networks to try and keep them at home for as long as possible. And we do a project, which is a great opportunity to do some research, and we'll talk about that in a minute. However, the good news is it's not all theory. So these are some of my former graduates now, and that's a guy called Ian, who's the manager of the air ambulance up in Staffordshire. So we didn't get the opportunity to fly in it, but what we did do was get the opportunity to do some work with the air ambulance crew, who were all critical care paramedics. We've obviously got a lot of moving and handling and stuff we do like that. We've got simulation, whole rakes of practical work that we're going to be doing with you. We work into professionally, so this is an opportunity. So these guys here are the fire service. So these are professional firefighters, and we set up some road traffic collisions. And obviously we took a group of paramedic students down there to go and do some work with the fire service. Obviously that's not something we can do at the moment, but it will be what we're aiming to get back to. These guys down here are actually podiatrists. So they've again got skills in lower limb assessment that paramedics don't have that we can use. So we work together so they could better learn some of our skills that would be useful for them, and vice versa. Here, this wasn't interprofessional learning. This was 2 groups of students doing dissection. So we've got some of our physio students and paramedic students there. We're dissecting various parts, so looking at lungs in this point, just to actually get some real hands-on, and just hope that that's the only time you ever do actually see lungs. If you see them on a patient, you've got a problem. Just so we do look at Telford. So Telford has just come on board, really. We're expanding what we're doing health-wise at Telford, and we are just in the process of developing a complete new set of clinical skills facilities. And this is a view of what it's going to look like down here. So we're going to have, we've got a house with a couple of bedrooms in it. One of the old offices has been converted into that. And in here, we're looking at one of the new skills labs, and upstairs on the first floor is a whole rake of new developments going on. So Telford's really exciting place to be at the moment. This is when I talked about your project earlier on. So I do want to talk about this specifically because this chap here, Steve Lodge and Henri Magna, both did a small research project with us. And this is these, so Stephen and Andre presenting their posters at conferences And we won a prize here for the poster, or it's research most likely to change practice, which is pretty good for a third-year student to achieve that. We've also presented that at an international conference now, and it will be published in the British Paramedic Journal in their March edition. So that's been accepted for publication. So this is what we ask of you, is to look. Steve just came up to me and said, you know, you said in year one we could do some research. I said, yep. And that's what we did. And that was a student-led project, as was Andre's here, looking at application of pelvic binders. So for people who've got pelvic fractures, that's what we're asking from you. That sort of like level of commitment. Placements, generally with West Midlands Ambulance Service. So this bit here is the West Midlands. We try to keep you within a reasonable driving distance. Always have supernumerary status, which means you're third person on an ambulance. That basically means that you can be in the back with patients all the time, because that's where the job's done. The job's not done behind the wheel of a 3.5 ton truck. It's done in the back of the vehicle looking after patients. The special circumstances bit, I'm not going to go into that here, but that's just basically requesting a specific placement. The other thing we do and work with is other placement opportunities. So we get you opportunities in an accident and emergency department to see what happens when you drop the patient off. End of life. So this is Compton Hospice, looks after people at the end of life. Operating department, you get the chance to practice airway management, vascular access, all those sorts of things in there under supervision of the experts. If we can, we get you into children's areas, so you can learn to look after children if you're not very good at dealing with children, because unless you've got younger siblings or you've got your own children, knowing how to talk to kids is not always that easy. We don't tend to go out to anywhere with learning disabilities, but we do sometimes get people with learning disabilities to come into us. That's always good fun, because they don't act, they are who they are, which is a great way of learning to communicate with, with people who communicate differently. Obstetrics, we get into maternity so that you can actually see a baby being born. I'll be honest, not my favourite part of the job, but it's part and parcel of what we have to do. And we do get some opportunities in walk-in centres and GP surgeries as well to take it to the next level. Just please take this with you to consider. It's 24-hour placements, 7 days per week is how West Midlands Ambulance Service operates, and you will be working nights, you'll be working weekends, you'll be working earlies. You will find out there are 2 5 o'clocks in the day, which thankfully I don't have to worry about anymore. But it's your responsibility to get to placement on time, and also start preparing for this. You're likely to see unpleasant things. And people also always say, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? And I hate it when people ask me that, because I'm saying, well, do you want me to relive it? Is that what you're asking me to do? The reason they were unpleasant was because I don't really want to go back over there. But we need to understand that unpleasant things are different for different people. And quite often the things that are unpleasant are just seeing loneliness and knowing that you're going to have to walk away from that person, and they're still going to be lonely when you've gone. And that's actually really difficult to deal with sometimes. But you get real life experience with real patients under supervision of real paramedics. Just a bit of a plug for us, National Student Survey satisfaction. We got 100% student satisfaction in 2018-19. So our students quite like what we were doing as well, which is always good. So from April this year, we do have 25 places at Telford, but they're full. And I don't think most of you would be eligible at the moment anyway, till you've got your qualifications. You've got 2 choices. So Telford is an April cohort. September cohort is always Walsall. So you can make the decision as to whether you apply for the Walsall cohort or whether you apply for Telford. Great thing about Telford is it's going to be a smaller cohort, and that does make a difference. It's a slightly different experience. You'll have brand spanking new facilities, which we've got at Walsall as well, which is good news. But if you're living up Telford and you want to hang around there, it's a great campus, and it's in being developed well now. Very briefly then, I did say no driving licence requirements, but for employability for an ambulance service, you will need a driving licence, and you'll probably need C1 category on this as well. The other thing is this thing at the bottom, enhanced medical requirement. So that's things like a certain amount of eyesight. So you need a certain amount of uncorrected eyesight to pass the enhanced medical requirement for driving emergency vehicles. So it's always just worth being aware of that. If you have any disability, check with your GP first, just to make sure that you can pass the requirement for that. Some of you might be interested in this. The last thing we look at, surprisingly, is your application. We will come to your personal statement after we've interviewed you. Two reasons for that. Number one, some people don't turn up for interviews. So for us to read the number of applications that we get, it's a waste of our time reading that. And secondly, we only read the applications then of the people that we're likely to make an offer to. So if you impress us during the interview process, that's when we read your personal statement and use that as part of the process. We use a values-based selection interview. And at the moment, it's all been done online, which is obviously not what any of us would like, but it is what it is. It's working quite well. Feedback from both applicants and from the staff is pretty good about it. But it's an interesting process. You'll get more information sent out to you should you apply to us. But this is a big thing. We're really interested in who you are, how you think, how you behave. We're not bothered. You know, don't get coming to me necessarily thinking, oh, I need to be able to talk to him about what, you know, all the things in the news about being a paramedic and what a paramedic is, because I'll be honest, I'm not really that fussed. What I'm interested in is, do you care? Are you compassionate? Are you passionate about this? Do you want to do it? That's what I'm after, more so than anything else. So when you're creating your persona for this, just be yourself, basically, is a rule. You can see what I'm like. This is the sort of thing we're after, somebody who can talk, somebody who's actually still passionate about looking after patients, even after 35 years of doing it. That's what we want. DBS, I'm not going to stick on. We can talk more about this, but so for those of you who've got criminal convictions, I hope most haven't, then you do need to declare it. And that's the important thing there. Failure to disclose is the problem, not necessarily the fact that you have a problem. Very briefly, occupational health as well goes into it. So you'll get a declaration form when you come through. But again, we have lots of students with a disability. Just because you have a disability doesn't preclude you from being a paramedic. You know, always come and talk to us first and we'll give you some advice around it. And that's me done. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because then I can see the chat. And I can see Paula.
Yes, I've popped back up again, Pete. Thank you very much. That was brilliant. So much detail. And I had not heard the term disco carpet before, so that conjures up all sorts of horrible images. But that was really brilliant. Thank you. I'm just going to give people the chance, because nothing has been posted in the Q&A section yet. So just give people the chance to post things. Oh, we've just had something. It's just a thank you from Charlotte to say thank you so very much. It's been brilliant. So that's lovely. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Anybody who wants to post a question for Pete about the course, about course numbers. That was really helpful, Pete, to know the cohort numbers for both Telford and Walsall as well. Right, we've got a couple. What qualifications do you need to enrol in the course?
So there's two routes through. You can either take the direct BSc, which is the 3-year program, in which case you're going to need effectively BCC on A levels or equivalent. And all of this can be found on the paramedic page. So it gives the full details of all of the qualifications, because obviously you've got BTECs, you've got access courses and a whole range of other qualifications. So typically what you're looking at is 3 A levels, grades B, C and C, plus you're going to need your GCSEs to include maths and science subjects. One of your A levels must be a science, but again, we're fairly flexible around what we consider to be a science. So if you're doing a health and social care, for example, we'll take that one quite happily. Biology, physics, anything with a science behind it.
Okay, thank you.
I can probably put a link into the page. If you don't have A levels of qualifications, there is a foundation year as well. So the foundation year turns it into a 4-year course. We interview for the BSc for your foundation year. So when you start the foundation year, as long as you pass the foundation year, you just continue on the program. So you don't have to then go back through any hurdles to try and get on the course. It is, once you're on the course, that's it. It's just a 4-year course instead of a 3-year course.
And if you do an access course and you've got the right amount of credits, presumably you can go straight on to the degree.
Absolutely you can. I've got the is there somewhere I can paste this into the chat?
Yeah, into the chat, yeah. Thank you, that's lovely. Okay, and Dan says, how many applicants do you usually have and how many do you interview? Okay, so the number of applicants we usually have is fairly horrendous to say. We had over 700 this year. We interview a fair number of them because, like I say, what we're interested in, we don't bother particularly looking at your personal statement until after we've interviewed you. So we tend to go for the interview first and then look at the application afterwards. So there'll be an initial sift done through the central admissions team who will just look at your qualifications. As long as you meet those qualifications, you should get an interview date sent out to you fairly soon after that. So we've got a whole rake of interview dates up to Christmas and then beyond. So we have a lot of applications, but again, the whole thing is, if you're looking at applying, don't worry about the numbers. It's not about anybody else, it's about you. And you know, we always look and say, oh, it's too difficult to get on as well. It's not, because people get on every year, so it can't be too difficult. It's just about focusing differently and saying, it's about me, not about other people. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Somebody's asking, if they train in the West Midlands, will it affect them getting a job in London or another area of the UK? No, not at all. So we got students who've moved all over the country and they're welcomed anywhere. University's got a good reputation and it's a nationally good reputation. So you'll walk into a job providing you're half decent. Okay, brilliant. Chloe is saying, extremely interesting. Thank you so much. My only question is around the studying at the uni setting and social distancing. Okay, so the situation at the moment is the only thing we're doing face-to-face on campus is skills teaching. Doing skills teaching in a reduced cohort numbers, and everybody's wearing personal protective equipment. That is going to continue for as long as COVID continues. The rest of it, we're doing online. So we're doing a lot of online teaching now. The good news is we're getting better at it, because I think, like everybody else, we got thrown into this very, very short notice. So people always say, oh, you could do things better. And yeah, of course, we can always do things better. And I think we are doing things a lot better now, but we've still got face-to-face teaching going on, and that will have to continue, because the minute that we have to stop doing skills teaching is the minute we have to close a course. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Hayley asks, do we have many mature students on the course? Loads of them. We've got people ranging from, I think, 18 to about 48 at the moment. Mm-hmm. So it's a very broad age group, very broad. Okay. And would you take individuals with a cash level 3 extended diploma? I'll have to ask Maisie to contact, to drop a separate email if we can forward that at some stage, because I can't necessarily give the definitive answer to that at the moment. Okay, and for an access course, is it 24 credits at merit or distinction? I have to go in, and the entry requirements get so complex. So access course, you need 45 must be at level 3, with at least 24 of those level 3 credits at merit or distinction. Yes, so the rest of them can be at pass level if necessary. Brilliant, thank you. Lottie, do the entry requirements differ from mature students? If so, what are they? Generally not, no. There are other things that we will look at, because we recognise that some students won't have traditional qualifications. So we will generally be looking for the equivalent somewhere along the line, but there's got to be something there that shows us you've got the wherewithal to get through academically. And that's really, really important, because if you're like 35 and you haven't studied since you were 16 and you don't have the qualifications, we haven't got the evidence that you've got the wherewithal to get through the programme. Okay, and if you have a health and social care level 3, can you still apply for the course? Yes. Yeah, brilliant. Jessica, is there specific accommodation for paramedic students, and is there parking available? There is parking available, and most paramedics tend to be put in the same area of the accommodation currently at Walsall, and I presume that will be same at Telford. If not, what they do tend to do is keep health students together where possible, because obviously health students work shifts, and I think everybody's used to that, so therefore people tend to be quieter. Okay, I've missed one, sorry, from Jessica. Is there a specific access to HE course you prefer?
Health, nursing, paramedic, anything that's got a health or science background to it is fine.
Okay, brilliant. How far does work experience go? Currently an emergency medical dispatcher.
It'll go some way, providing people have got the academic qualifications, and all of those things build into the overall picture. So in terms of would being an emergency medical dispatcher take out the need to have the academic qualifications, the answer to that is no. You would still need the academic qualifications, but your experience would add in when you come to your interview. And certainly when we come to look at your personal statement, all of that background is going to add some meat onto the bones there for us.
Dan says, how can he make himself stand out at interview other than showing his passion and interest for the career?
It's about knowing what we're looking for. So we're after, like I say, people who are compassionate, people who are caring. It's having examples of that. You know, it's very easy to say, oh, you know, I'm a great communicator. Lots of people put that into a personal statement. What we're looking for is that you actually demonstrate that. So if you do talk and say, oh, you know, I'm a compassionate individual, my follow-up question is always going to be, demonstrate it how. So it's about thinking about that. You know, every answer that you've got to give us, come up with examples of it. And again, people look at and say, well, I can't get experience in a healthcare setting. You say, have you worked in hospitality? People have worked in a pub, because that's got great communication skills. People have done Duke of Edinburgh Gold. I know what commitment is required to achieve your Duke of Edinburgh Gold. It's all of those things. You know, if people are competitive swimmers, competitive sports people, I know what goes into that. And that's what we're looking at. Somebody who can, you know, actually stick at something, because you will require, for want of a better word, stickability on this course. There are going to be really challenging times.
Thank you. Charlotte is in a pre-access course, doing access next year due to GCSEs. When would she look at applying?
It depends on when you're going to complete. So generally, we don't tend to look at deferred applications. So you need to be applying in the year for which you're planning on joining us.
So that would presumably be December next year, in time for January 15th. Okay. If only 25 people can get into Telford, if I say wanted the April cohort there, but then when it comes to April, I don't get in, does that mean I have to wait till the next year, or before the Wolverhampton cohort? Would you find out if you're at Telford or Wolverhampton before the first cohort?
It's an interesting, I know exactly what you're saying. It's an interesting question at the moment. So currently what we're anticipating is that people will apply for Telford as their first choice. And what I would suggest is that you can do two things. So if you're only applying to Wolverhampton, which I would recommend you don't do, just on the basis that you need to like spread your risk a little bit. If you are only applying to one or two universities, put down both campuses. But I would reckon that the likelihood is that if we've got a really strong candidate and we haven't got space at Telford, then we are more than likely to offer a place on the Walsall cohort coming up. The other thing is, the reason we've got 25 at Telford is a lot of people don't want an April cohort. A lot of people want to go to September. So we're anticipating that we're going to have a smaller number of applications for the Telford cohort. So it may actually be more straightforward to get onto that programme. Can't guarantee it, but you would think it would be.
Okay. Henry asks what a weekly timetable looks like for students on our placements done in blocks or weekly. So
we've just moved more to a block placement, and semester 1, year 1 is largely in university, and we spend 3.5 to 4 days per week at university or in lectures. Or I say lectures, they're not really lectures, seminars, workshops, all those types of things, and in skills. And you'll get at least 1 day per week to do personal study and have a lie-in. The second semester, then, we have 3 weeks where you still continue sort of like doing 3 to 4 days in university and 3 weeks in placement. And we're never going to go much beyond a 3 week, except when you get after Easter, in which case we put you into full-time practice.
Okay, thank you. Andy has firmly accepted his conditional place at Telford for April, passed all his equivalencies, uploaded his results to eVision. Can we advise when he will be informed of the next steps?
I'd have thought that should have been fairly soon, to be honest, because everything's been sorted for the September cohorts. I'll always prioritise the September at this time of year and get everybody sorted, but we're beyond that, so it should be fairly soon. If not, just drop an email to admissions@wlb.ac.uk.
Okay, thank you. Kelly says, I don't know if you've answered this already, if you're unsuccessful for the September start for Walsall, is there a way to apply for Telford in April? Thank you.
Generally not. We don't. So it's a really difficult one because it depends how unsuccessful you were, which I know sounds a bit strange, but if somebody's just teetering on the edge and we just haven't quite got space for them, then we might be in a position to say, we can't fit you in September at Walsall, would you take April in Telford? And that would then be your decision. If somebody's had a really bad interview or something's gone wrong somewhere and we're not likely to offer a place, then if we won't offer it at Walsall, we wouldn't offer it at Telford either. So I think it depends how well or badly you've done, to be honest.
Okay. Megan says, how long after we send our application should we hear from you regarding an interview?
Generally, it's been fairly slow because this is done through our central admissions team. So they've put in new processes this year, and we would like to think it would be within a week that you should hear something back so that we can actually fill our interview slots. So we've given our central admissions loads of interview slots and they fill them for us. So we don't do anything with that part. And if you're not hearing back again, if you can just contact the admissions and just say, I've submitted my application, blah, 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 and hopefully they will give you some information on that.
Okay, sorry, some of my questions seem to be disappearing. On placement, would we be working every day for those 3 weeks?
No, again, this is something we've moved away from, is that students generally, what we've been doing is working 2 days at university, 2 days in placement, and we found that students are absolutely shattered at the end of it. So even during the 3 weeks of placement, you are probably only going to be doing 24 hours. So it's 2 12-hour shifts, maximum of 3 12-hour shifts to give you some break and to give you some reading study time as well.
Okay, thank you. Paramedic science with foundation year can be an option if you don't meet the entry requirements. Does this mean if you haven't got the 45 credits from an access course, so that would be appropriate, or how would you know if this is an option available to you?
I think the issues always with the foundation year are for students who apply for the full BSc planning on having the requirements and then fail to meet those requirements. Now, this year it's been fairly straightforward because what we've been able to do is anybody who's fallen into that boat, we could drop them back onto the foundation year to pick up those skills so that they can join the programme. I'm not sure that's going to be available going forward because we're having a lot of people who are applying directly for the foundation year now. So it's a really difficult question to answer, I'm afraid, and I'm not sure I have a definitive answer for you. I think realistically, you need to make that decision as to which one you're going for. And if you're going for the BSc, then it's just making sure that you do get those 45 credits from your access course.
Okay. And Megan asks, can entry requirements be a mix of A-levels and an access to HE course?
They can indeed, yeah. So as long as you meet the requirements, then we're not going to be specific about whether they're A-levels or a mixture of. What we won't have is people who've got 6 A-levels to get the points. Because we have had that previously where somebody had six A-levels all at grade E, so we added up the points and they came there and say, but
Okay, yeah, not a good idea. Bethany asks again about cash qualifications.
Again, I'll have to come back to you about cash and where we are with cash.
Yeah, okay. Studying level 2 maths but won't have the test until February next year. Will this affect my application? It
shouldn't do. Our requirement is obviously that people have got the qualifications before they start. So, we anticipate, particularly with the fact that, things like GCSEs and equivalents were cancelled last year, it's impacted a lot of people. So, as long as people are heading down that direction, and you'll get a conditional offer based around doing that.
Okay. Naomi says she only has MVQ level 3.
Okay, so NVQs aren't recognised for entry to the course, so you'd probably need to apply for the foundation year for that one.
Okay. And she also doesn't have maths or English. So
if you haven't got the maths or English, you'll need to get the maths and English before you can apply for the programme. You'd be turned down at application for that.
Yes, and Bethany, how many UCAS points are required for the course?
So it's 104, equivalent to 104 UCAS points, and it's on a BCC from 3 A levels. And like I say, one of those subjects must be a science-based one.
Okay. And I'm just looking back through, because I think there were a few people who put questions in the chat.
It was, Paula, it was just people thanking us and everything. So it was just thank you for those attending. And I have popped in, as Pete mentioned, for those people that need the admissions email, I have popped that in the chat for you. Apologies, in the Q&A for you. So the admissions email is in there if you do need it.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Laura. I am aware of time. I can see that we've still got quite a few participants. We have got Lee Cooper in the wings, who is going to do a student finance talk. For those of you who obviously have got time restrictions, please feel free to leave. But if you do want to stay and listen to Lee's talk about student finance, obviously you're very welcome. And I'm sorry that we've overrun, but obviously there's a huge amount of information that Pete had to give, and obviously loads of questions, which is absolutely brilliant, because obviously the more information we can give out, the better in this session. So sorry to keep you waiting, Lee, and over to you now for your advice session on student finance. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Paula. Right, I'm going to have to turn my camera off because my laptop is a little bit poorly at the moment. And if I do too many things on it at once, the processing power goes through the roof. So you'll have to ignore my beautiful face and just see the PowerPoint that I'm going to pop on the screen for you now, like Chris Whitty does. So I'll just try and share my screen now. Just bear with me. Okay. Yeah, as I said, I'm Lee. I'm one of the advisors here at the university, and today we're going to have a chat about the funding available for paramedical science, and exactly what's available for UK students who currently live in England. If you are a UK student and you live in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, the fundamentals are roughly the same, but little bits might change. So please feel free to get in touch with us to discuss those. We have an advice centre in the city centre in Wolverhampton. You can normally come and visit us in there, but please don't at the moment because of this pandemic. Obviously, we can't do face-to-face client stuff, but we're still able to talk to you over the phone, over Zoom, over Teams, that sort of thing. And the contact details are on the screen now. Right. To qualify for funding, you need to be a UK citizen and have lived in the UK for 3 years in order to be eligible for it. And there's 2 types of funding that you can get. So 2 ways that you can help fund your studies, through the government and through the NHS. The government funding is a tuition fee loan and also a maintenance or living cost loan. And there's some other targeted grants as well, specifically for people with children. And possibly, you know, helping students with disabilities or specific learning needs. There's the new training grant from the NHS, and there's some more additional allowances there. One thing I must make clear with paramedical science, it's different to the other NHS courses. Like nursing and midwifery, you could get funding again for doing a 2nd degree. So if you've got a history degree and you fancied doing nursing, you could come back to university and the government would fund you again. Sadly, for paramedic science, that is not the case. You'll only get funding for your 1st degree in paramedic science. So the tuition fee loan, universities can charge up to £9,250 a year. We do at Wolves, and you can get a tuition fee loan for that. You just go onto the student finance website and you say you'd like it. And each year, the government will pay us £9,250 to ourselves on your behalf to cover your course costs. You'll only repay your loan once you start earning something called threshold. And when you start earning a salary over the threshold, don't worry too much about it at the moment. I'll go through it in a little bit and it will make a little bit more sense for you. So the living cost or maintenance loan is the most important loan that you're going to want to get. This is money from the government, and they pay you at the beginning of each term, so September, January and April. It comes to you in 3 amounts throughout the year, and it's money to live on, pay your bills, travel, get books, and just get some creature comforts to enjoy life with. So that's money for you. It's means tested on family income and depends on who you're living with while you are studying. So if you're living with your parents, you'll see that you'll get the lower amount. If you're living away from the parental home while you're studying, it's a higher amount. So if you moved into halls, student accommodation, rented accommodation when you're a student, then you'd get the higher amount there. The higher amounts also for those students who live in their own homes, such as mature students. There's actually even a higher rate of loan, and that's for students who are eligible for certain benefits. Broadly speaking, these are single parents or those students with disabilities who might receive a higher level disability allowance at the moment. So the student loan depends on your family income, but the important thing to remember is all eligible students are entitled to some loan regardless of the family income. And we'll see that on the next slide here. So it's worked out how the government assess it is they assess it on the gross taxable income from the tax year 1920. So they look at the household income and they look at the household income of parents or partner, husband, wife. And what they will do is they will look at the income, they'll assess it, and you will get a certain amount to live on. So if your household income was less than £25,000 a year, you would then get the full rate of loan. If the household income was £65,000 or over, you'd get the minimum rate of loan. And obviously, if the household income is somewhere in between, you're going to get somewhere in between. And this slide on the screen shows you exactly what you should be able to get. Just to add, the only time they would ever look at your income as a student, now this probably doesn't come into effect with paramedic science because the course is very intense. But if you did a course that had a part-time job, they wouldn't take that income into account. The only time they can take students' income into account is if you've got income, non-earned income coming in from a property, say you rented a house out, or pension, or a trust fund. Never met anyone with a trust fund at Wolverhampton, but there's always a first time, I suppose. So it's always income of parents or partner. They don't look at student income unless it's obviously the unearned income. So whose income do they look at? Again, I've mentioned that it's the income of parents, the income of husband or wife, or they look at the income of a partner if the student's 25 or over. They do look at the gross taxable income for the year 1920, and something which might be relevant to a lot of people now, thanks to this horrible virus that's happened, is obviously with the income in 1920, people might have earned more money, and unfortunately, due to circumstances changing, when someone goes to university, the household income might have radically changed. You can submit a current tax year reassessment if the income has changed by more than 15%. So if 1920 was a great year for income, but then sadly this year someone in the house has lost their job or something like that, and income has really gone down and it's gone down by more than 15%, you can get a tax year reassessment to get that reassessed. If you do need to do that, just get in touch with us at the Gateway. We can run through the process with you because it is, it's a little bit complex to go into during this presentation, but that's an option for you. So don't worry if circumstances have changed, you can always get that re-looked at. So the additional grants that are available from the government, from Student Finance England, they are things like Parents' Learning Allowance, specifically for people with children. They're tightly means tested, so you have to send proof in and they will assess it. You might not get the full amount, but you might get a little bit, and every little helps. So if you think you're entitled to it, please apply for it. There is also the childcare grant, which covers up to 85% of registered childcare costs with a registered childcare, nursery, after school clubs, that type of thing. There's also disabled students allowance. This is for students with disabilities or student with specific learning needs. It's up to £25,000. It's one maximum amount and it is assessed according to need. It's not means tested. So for instance, at the university, all our computers have enabling software on as standard for you to use. But some students may need extra support. They might need signers, they might need scribes. There's varying things that can be done to help you through university. So disabled students allowance is always there for you to apply for, and once again you can do that through the Student Finance England website. So when you think of applying for student finance, if you're starting in September, you want to apply early, apply in February when Student Finance England opens. So if your course starts in September 2021, apply in February 2021. Apply nice and early. You don't need a confirmed place at university to apply. Just put down the university that you think you're going to attend and the course you think you're going to do, because all the information you send off to them about proof of earnings is going to remain the same regardless of what university you went to. Make sure all the information is correct, especially all the taxable income figures, just so you don't have to resend things off, because it does take around about 6 to 8 weeks to do an assessment sometimes. If you don't have access to a laptop to fill in the forms, you can use paper copies. They can be downloaded. If you can't get hold of paper copies, again, it's something we could normally help you with in the gateway. In normal times, you could come in and we could help you with that. Please send any documentation by recorded delivery, just to make sure that Royal Mail don't lose it in the post and you've got proof that it has been delivered to Student Finance. So this is how you apply for student finance. This website, you can see the screen, you'll get very used to it. You create an account, they will give you a customer reference number and a password. Always make a note of that mentally in your head, because you will use it often. Each year you apply for your student finance, so you'll use it like that. Also, your parents or your husband, your partner, your wife, they will need to create an account too, to submit any supporting evidence. Peter did mention that the training grant is now available from the NHS. Now, this is free money, so this isn't a loan. This is free money for you in the form of a grant. So you can get the training grant worth up to £5,000, well, £5,000 worth of money there. Parents with children can also get an extra £2,000 grant as well. Applications open a few months before the start of the course. So in September, they should hopefully open July-ish, and you can apply on this website here. It is very important, though, that you do apply for your Student Finance England funding first, as the governments have been a little bit lazy and they're using the proof of eligibility for your student loan to prove that you can have the training grant. So you must apply for your student finance loan through the government first before you apply for the training grant. So student loans, how do you repay them? Repaying is a big worry of people who come to university. And what I'm going to tell you over the next minute will make things seem a little bit better for you guys. So repayments start in April after you graduate, only if you're earning above the threshold, which is currently £27,295. That goes up in April 2021. So in April 2021, the threshold is £27,295. You will only pay back 9% of anything you earn above that threshold. So only pay back 9% of anything you earn above 27,295. Repayments are taken through the pay system if you're employed, so they go straight away from your pay packet without you realizing it, so you'll never get used to it being in your account. It'll just vanish. Interest is charged on the loan, and it is linked to the retail price index, plus up to 3%. However, the good news is your loan is wiped after 30 years. So if you, 80% of graduates will never fully pay back their student loan, it's estimated. So, your student loan gets wiped after 30 years, whether you've paid it or not, and you probably won't be unless you're earning big bucks, for want of a better phrase. So this gives you a rough idea on the student loan repayments. You can see if your salary was £30,000, your monthly repayment would be just over £20. So it is quite affordable. The more you earn, you'll obviously pay a higher amount, but it's always only 9%. So that is the good thing. You know, the loan is based on what you earn, not what you owe. So it's always 9% over the threshold that you pay back. Don't repay back your student loans earlier, you know, because you're not going to get any benefit really. And this brings me on to the final slide. Keep up to date with finance. It is important because things change all the time. We have some information on our website, and those are the URLs there for you. We also have some information on things like the government website, who give you the money, which.co.uk, and that nice man off the telly, Martin Lewis, on moneysavingexpert.com is fantastic. So pick up tips where you can. But if you've got any questions about finance or applications, anything to do with that, you can always get back in touch with us at the Gateway, and we're happy to help. I'm also here now, hopefully for a few minutes, if we've got some time left. I'm not too sure how long I've gone on, to answer any questions you might have now as well.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Lee. That was really detailed, lots of information. So thank you. We've got quite a few people still here with us, but I'm just aware that people will have other commitments. And I know that Laura from the events team has got another event coming up soon. If anybody has got a question, if they could post it quickly in the Q&A, and if not, they've got the chance to email Lee at the Gateway for further support, if that's okay. Obviously, Pete's still with us as well, if anybody has anything else. I'm currently in my first year at another uni studying a different course. This is a question from Thomas. I understand I can get an extra year covered by Student Finance England, but was wondering if it would cover a foundation year.
Yes, student finance, you normally get, as a rule of thumb, without looking into it too deeply, Thomas, I mean, if you want to send us an email, we can look into the ins and outs for you. But normally for student finance, you get course duration plus an extra year minus any previous study. So in your circumstance, I would imagine you'll get full funding again for the course. Okay,
that's brilliant. Thank you. Lottie says she lives in a house share at the moment. Whose income do they look at?
Lottie, that's going to be one of those that I'm going to have to ask you some questions for that I wouldn't want you to put into a live chat. So if you could email gateway@wlv.ac.uk. That's gateway@wlv.ac.uk. I'll pop this in the chat anyway. We can just go through it together over an email, and I will I'll run through it with you, because I just need to ask you a few questions that I obviously don't want to discuss in front of in a public arena.
Okay, that's brilliant. And then somebody just asking whether they can get the recordings of these two Zoom calls. And if everybody is happy with that, what we normally do is post the events up on our YouTube channel, so people can watch them on our YouTube channel. That's University Centre Telford YouTube channel. So if you just give us a week or so to edit the recording, and then they will be up on there, if that's okay, and you can share that with people.
For anyone, just to add, as Coop said, the Gateway email is in the chat for anyone that does have any finance questions. So it is in the chat for everyone. But again, it's gateway@wlv.ac.uk. But just take a look, and it's the email's in the chat for you folks.
That's lovely. Thank you, Laura. And just a thank you from Andrew, saying that was really informative. So I think if I just say thank you ever so much to everybody who's attended. That's been a brilliant, brilliant session, so much information. And thank you again to Pete Gregory from Paramedic Science, so much information covered in his session, and also to Lee Cooper from applicant support. That's been brilliant, and I'm sorry we've overrun and taken up people's time, but hopefully everybody's found that really useful. We've got some lovely comments in the Q&A as well, with people thanking us for the sessions. So thanks very much, Pete and Lee and Laura, for your support, and everyone who's attended. Thank you very much, and bye-bye for now.